Chapter 16. Those fates that decree what is going to happen and to whom had evidently been applying themselves with such vigour to Cornelius Murphy that they had quite forgotten all about his father. Murphy Senior had been sitting outside his garden shed for the better part of this particular day, and nothing out of the ordinary had happened to him. "I can't understand this," said the daddy. "I was quite certain that the fates had something up their collective sleeve for me today, but it seems I was mistaken."
"That looks about the size of it," said Charlie, the daddy's close friend. "Though I had a sort of feeling myself."
"You can't always trust a hunch, and that's a fact for you."
The daddy sighed a heartfelt sigh and scratched in the dust with his dibber.
"Some days are just plain dull."
The voice came from an old watering can, known to the daddy as Boris. The daddy yawned and scratched his tweedy trouser legs. Nice day, though. The watering can kept its own counsel. Charlie the trowel said, "Perhaps something will happen," but nothing did. As it was now approaching 7 p.m. and beginning to turn cold, the daddy gathered up his pals and put them back on their shelves in the shed.
"I'll see you boys tomorrow,"
he said. During the night that followed, certain persons surreptitiously prized the padlock from the daddy's shed door, gained unlawful entry and tampered with his doings. The model town was vandalised. The watering can, of which he was so proud, received second-degree denting, and several of his best trowels were spirited away, including Charlie. With the coming of a troubled dawn, the full horror of the previous night's happenings became manifest. The daddy was quite disheartened by the sight of the upturned hoe and the displaced shears. In fact, he was taken somewhat poorly, which was the cause of no small concern to his wife, considering his normally robust constitution. She had to rush into the house and bring him out a chair. "Would you like a cup of tea?" she asked. "I think there's still some left in the pot from last night."
"My trowels," moaned the daddy. "My Rygo and Westerly brass-tipped cedar-handled trenching trowels. Gone and never called me mother."
"Typical of trowels, that is." Mrs. Murphy folded her arms under her prosthetic bosoms, off without a word of goodbye. Not that they ever had much to say for themselves. Very uncommunicative. The daddy offered her a cold fish-eye. "No thanks, dear. I've just put one out."
"Eh?"
said the daddy. "Tools," his wife went on. "Few of them there are that will answer to their names, and fewer that can solve even the most rudimentary algebraic problems. The humble dipper, for example, rarely knows more than the more basic form of communication, namely that of mime."
"Eh?"
said the daddy, again. "However," his wife went on, again, "I once observed a pair of secateurs perform the final act of Gilbert and Sullivan's HMS Pinafore without music or vocal rendition, to the appreciation of an entire shed full of implements."
"Have you been sniffing glue again, woman?"
"Certainly not. I was just trying to cheer you up."
"Well, don't bother. I will weather out this particular storm by myself."
"Stuff you then." His wife departed, taking the kitchen chair with her. The daddy viewed his dishevelled shed.
"What a mess,"
he muttered.
"Whoever could have done such a thing?"
"It was that Harry Thompson from the Borough Planning Committee,"
said a 5-pound bag of fertiliser.
"Councillor Winthrop was with him."
An 18-inch garden sieve added helpfully. Inside the house, Mrs. Murphy poured herself a cup of cold tea. "I shall have to have my husband taken away," she said. "Any man who talks to his tools is clearly mad, but any man who talks to them and gets an answer could well be dangerous."
"You'll need a doctor's note,"
said the teapot.
"Dr. Jameson down at the clinic is always good for one of them,"
the coal scuttle added. Cornelius Murphy awoke with a bit of a headache. He was all tucked up in the abbot's bed, although he wasn't to know this yet, as he hadn't opened his eyes.
"Are you feeling better now?"
Cornelius blinked, focused, and rapidly shut.
"Not altogether good, I appear to have."
He squinted at the pair of tups. Double vision.
"He'll be as right as rain," said brother the Uncle 8. "This stuff of epics."
His nephew grinned.
"He'll be fine."
And double hearing. Cornelius groaned. The abbot, now restored to dignity, dabbed the Murphy's forehead with a cold sponge.
"You are the hero of the hour,"
he told Cornelius. "You risked your life to save the monastery." The tall boy smiled up at the abbot. "I hope I didn't cause too much damage."
"Have no worries on that score."
"Good," said Cornelius. "I won't then."
"No, of course not. Brother Six has told me all about your mission here, and the cash you've brought here from the Pope. The damage can be paid for out of that. I shouldn't be more than 20,000 or so."
Cornelius groaned once more. So tell me, the abbot went on, about the soft drugs and the satellite television. When can we get started on that? And what's the Pope really like, by the way? Is it true he has his own gymnasium? Have you ever seen him working out? Cornelius groaned once more. The abbot collapsed in a fit of irreverent laughter. "Aye," went Cornelius. I'm sorry." The abbot dabbed at his eyes. You should have seen your face. A picture. Aye. Don't worry, the young Tuppe here has told me everything, why you are here, with whom you wish to speak, so when you feel up to it, I will introduce you to Brother Rizzler. Cornelius Murphy grinned from ear to ear. Now that will be just a job. He paused and sniffed the air. The abbot saw his expression change. What is it? He asked. What do you smell? Bacon, said Cornelius Murphy. The abbot and two of the Tuppes left the tall boy to wash and dress. Cornelius was more than pleased to find that his clothes had been laundered and his shoes shined. He took his breakfast with the abbot in an ill-lit refectory. The tiny windows were set so high in the bulging walls that they scarcely offered any illumination whatsoever. Thus, large pewter candelabras stood upon each dining table, weeping wax into everyone's meals. While the Murphy filled his face with food, his ears were filled by the abbot's speculations regarding the enigmatic Mr. Campbell. A demonic agency, the abbot assured Cornelius, captured me, locked me in my cupboard, stole my robes, and finally I saw it change before my very eyes. Then whoosh, straight out of the door. You saw it yourself. I certainly did. Cornelius pushed a fried mushroom to the side of his plate. The image of that mouldy fruit and veg parading out through the abbot's door was going to haunt him for a long, long time. That would be Satan's work right enough. The abbot swigged herb tea. Satan? He of the cloven hoof, no other. Something of an occupational hazard in this profession. I shall have to atone. I will get one of the brothers to give me a good sound birching. Come to think of it, I'll get all the brothers to give me a good sound birching. Better to be safe than sorry. Don't you agree? Far better. Cornelius pushed his skinless sausage to the side of the plate. This Campbell was clearly something less than a human, or should that be more than a man? But a satanic agency. That took a lot of coming to terms with. Of course, there had been the matter of the toy Cadillac. Dark magic was certainly involved there. But real demons? A man that could turn into a carton of festering fruit? Worrying stuff. Whatever was in Rune's papers had to be pretty important if Satan himself was after it. Satan himself? Cornelius toyed nervously with his prunes. They'd been wrapped in sliced bacon and served upon individual portions of toast, and very toothsome they looked too. But Cornelius felt no longer hungry. He pushed his plate aside. The abbot took it and swept its contents onto his plate. Devils on horseback, he said. My favourite. Whilst the abbot ate mightily, Cornelius sipped his herb tea and settled down to listen, as the abbot told him, between mouthfuls, of all the comings and goings Cornelius had missed. Angus, Hamish and Sawney had been rounded up and were currently under lock and key in the monastery dungeon. The abbot had decided it would be best for their souls if they indulged in a little community service. He planned to have them repair all the damage, under heavily armed supervision, of course. There was also the matter of the vanishing hitchhiker, originally discovered wandering in a confused state by brothers 10 and 12, who were returning in the staff van from a status quo anniversary gig. This strange fellow had apparently risen from his bed of delirium, donned a habit, then magically mended the karaoke machine Brother 8 had been labouring away at for weeks. Then he had nobly impersonated Brother 8 to protect him from the wild warriors. He had undergone torment at the hands of the satanic Campbell and received the metaphysical pie in the face, and then, during all the confusion that followed, he had slipped silently away and never to be seen again. All about the monastery, monks were muttering about the hitcher's possible identity. Scriptural verses of the "I was a stranger and you took me in" variety were being quoted. The word was out that Saint Sackos had received a visitation, that the mystery man was none other than our Lord himself. And what with the miracle of the mended machine, there seemed good grounds to support the theory. Added to this, brothers 10 and 12, lifting the sheet from the hitchhiker's sickbed on the off chance that any Turin Shroud-style laundry soiling may have occurred, happened upon nothing more nor less than 2 free tickets for the status quo anniversary gig in Terra del Fuego, and if that wasn't a gift from the Lord, well. The abbot was weighing up the pros and cons of all of this before he took the very large step of writing to Rome and putting in for a pay rise. "But now," said the abbot, "I am sure you are anxious to meet Brother Risler. Shall I lead the way?" Tuppe and his uncle were seated on the floor outside the refectory, discussing the sad decline in the popularity of the porcine circus, and how young women were getting very tall nowadays. They both rose as the abbot appeared with Cornelius. Not that it made any significant difference height-wise, but it was polite. "Brother Aid," the abbot smiled down upon that body, "I was just telling Mr. Murphy here about the karaoke machine. He'd very much like to speak to you about it, but for now I'm taking him down to meet the secret brother, so perhaps you could stop the small talk and shove off back to your workroom. Get some work done, eh?"
"Yes, Holy Father, yes indeed."
Brother Aid bowed. Not that it made any significant difference height-wise, but just to be polite. "This way, then," said the abbot. The abbot led Cornelius and Tuppe through a maze of corridors and down many flights of steps. Tuppe stepped very warily. Cornelius asked the abbot why his Risler referred to as the secret brother. "Brother Risler suffers from a terrible affliction which makes it impossible to join in the everyday life of the monastery." Tuppe made a troubled face.
"A terrible affliction? Would that be as hideously disfigured or highly contagious?"
"No," the abbot smiled wanly. "Nothing like that. You'll understand when you meet him. His cell is just along here. Follow me." They turned the corner into yet another corridor. Cornelius eyed it with amusement. There seemed to be no perspective. "Distracting, isn't it? The far end of the corridor is 6 times larger than this. Doors, everything. Watch." He strode forward. The effect was striking. The abbot appeared to shrink.
"I'm not going down there."
Tuppe shook his head fiercely.
"I shall vanish for certain."
"Come on, Tuppe." Cornelius followed the abbot. Tuppe followed Cornelius. The abbot stopped before a door some 30 feet in height. Into this, a 6-foot door had been cut and fitted, and into this, a little peephole. The abbot put his fingers to his lips and urged Cornelius to take a peep through it. Cornelius did so, and a startled cry arose from his lips. Beyond the peephole lay a large and brightly lit room. It was sparsely furnished. There were many books. At the centre of the room stood a writing desk. At it sat a monk. There was nothing particularly remarkable about him. He was tall, thin, whitely bearded, and late in years. It was the thing floating over his head which had given Cornelius cause for concern. It was approximately 12 inches in diameter, glowing brightly. It was a halo. At the sound of Murphy's cry, the old monk looked up. The halo vanished, to be replaced by a large, free-floating red question mark. Cornelius drew back from the peephole and gaped at the abbot. "Brother Risler," the abbot told him, "suffers from a unique condition. We don't know the actual name of it, so we tentatively gave it one of our own. We came up with bloke what has all them little lines and words and stuff coming out of his bonds like what they do in cartoon strip syndrome."
"This I have to see,"
said Tuppe. The abbot knocked.
"Come,"
called Brother Risler. The abbot swung open the door within a door and entered the big room. Tuppe and Cornelius followed, and Tuppe saw the big red question mark.
"Good God,"
went he. Brother Risler's face clouded and tiny daggers sped from his eyes toward the small blasphemer.
"Oh no!"
Tuppe took shelter behind Cornelius. "Brother Risler," the abbot nodded to the tall old monk, "I am sorry to trouble you at your devotions, but an urgent matter has arisen." The daggers were gone. The question mark swam once more above the brother's head.
"How might I help you?"
"This is Mr. Cornelius Murphy and his companion Tuppe." Tuppe peeped out and made a brave face.
"Sorry,"
said he.
"No, I'm sorry."
The old monk smiled serenely. The halo was back. "Brother Risler, Mr. Murphy here saved the monastery from destruction. A satanic agency entered the cloister. It sought something that you may have in your possession."
"Oh."
Brother Risler ran his rosary through his long, slim fingers.
"So it has come to that. I knew that one day it must."
"You have some papers, sir. Papers which once belonged to Hugo Rune."
"Rune!"
As Cornelius spoke the name, a small dark thundercloud materialized above Brother Risler. Cornelius pointed to it. "Is this his doing?" "Not his directly, but he was ultimately responsible. If I'd not gone with him, gazed in there. Black letters spelt the word gloom across the thundercloud. Would it trouble you greatly to speak of it? Cornelius asked.
No, not any longer. But firstly you must tell me, why do you wish to see Rune's papers?
In order to have them published.
Published?
Several exclamation marks appeared. The monk shook his head.
They will never be published.
I intend to see that they will.
And who might you be to do such a thing?
Here's Cornelius Murphy, and he is the stuff of epics, said Tuppe. If anyone can do it, he can.
Brother Risler stared into the air above the Murphy's head. Cornelius turned up his eyes. He could see only hair. What are you looking at? The old monk stroked his beard.
Interesting, very interesting. Your small friend appears to be telling the truth.
What are you doing? You're doing something. Cornelius felt suddenly very uncomfortable. He's reading your thought bubble, the abbot explained. We all have them, all the time, except when we're sleeping. Then all we have is little rows of sets. Of course, they're generally invisible to the naked eye. Brother Risler is probably the only man on earth who can see them. What a gift.
What a gift, Mr. Murphy. A curse.
The monk gazed down at Tuppe, who was now feeling the air above his head.
All in good time, said he.
I never said anything.
No, but you're thinking it. Grab the papers, Cornelius, and let's get out of this loony bin. That's what your little bubble had written in it. Loony is spelt with a Y, by the way.
Cornelius spoke up. If our thoughts are made plain to you, you will know that we speak the truth. Might I see the papers?
As I told your friend, all in good time, I will give you the papers. There is much we must speak of first.
Then I'll take my leave for now, spake the abbot. I have a pressing matter which must be taken in hand.
So I see.
Brother Risler smiled broadly.
Such atonement. You won't be able to ride your bike for a week.
Quite so. The abbot blushed. Then farewell, Brother Risler, and I will speak to you later, gentlemen.
Farewell, Holy Father, and don't forget to turn the other cheek.
Goodbye, and thanks, said Cornelius.
Be lucky,
said Tuppe. The abbot left in haste, closing the door behind him. Tuppe looked at Cornelius. Cornelius looked at Tuppe, and both gazed up at the air above their respective heads. Brother Risler laughed.
You don't know what to think. If you would prefer it, I shall stand on the inglenook with my head up the chimney.
No, please. We have nothing to hide.
As you will, then.
Brother Risler fanned out his long fingers on his desk.
I have Rune's papers, some but not all, and I do not have the ocarina.
The ocarina? Cornelius asked.
The reinvented ocarina. When you have read the papers, you will understand why they could never be published, also why you will need the ocarina.
Tell me about Hugo Rune. You knew him for many years, did you not?
Many years I was his acolyte, his Boswell, his amanuensis. I travelled the world with him. Never was there such a man as Rune, such a thinker, such a genius, such a hater of Bud Abbott.
But he was a nutter, surely,
Tuppe put in.
I flicked through his book. Hedgehogs falling out of the sky, biros with minds of their own, small screws breathing inside pop-up toasters.
Brother Risler smiled again.
You don't believe a word.
Tuppe shook his head.
Yet you believe other things. You believe that the earth revolves round the sun, for instance.
That's because it does,
Tuppe protested.
But who would have believed you if you'd said that 500 years ago? Copernicus was given a pretty rough ride by the Inquisition. Would you have been prepared then to back him up?
Well,
went Tuppe.
Probably not, is my guess. But now we accept the Copernican system as a scientific fact. But there are no ultimate facts. What is believed to be a fact is only a fact until another fact supersedes it. Science is only a fashion, nothing more.
But some of Rune's facts are pretty fanciful, said Cornelius.
You have read them. Can you actually prove them wrong?
Cornelius scratched his chin. Not as such.
How many primary colours are there?
The old monk asked. Cornelius thought about it. As I recall, the psychological primary is number 6, red, yellow, blue, green, black and white. Any colour can be regarded as formed from a mixture of 2 or more of these.
He knows all kinds of stuff like that, said Tuppe. You should try him on tonsures.
I am sure your friend is a mine of esoteric information. He is wrong about the primary colours, though. There are, in fact, 9. Rune discovered the other 3.
Now that is nonsense, said Cornelius.
Indeed.
Rizzler rooted in the lap pocket of his habit and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. He presented it to Cornelius. The tall boy stared at it. The paper had been printed with a colour. It was a reddy, yellowy, bluey, greeny, blackish sort of white, except that it was not. It was an entirely new colour. Cornelius found his eyes beginning to water. He pinched at them.
You can't look at it for more than a moment.
Rizzler plucked the paper from the Murphy's fingers.
The other 2 are much worse. One of them makes you break out in hives. The other will put you in a coma. Care to see?
Rizzler offered the slip to the doubting Tuppe. The small fellow turned his face away.
No, thank you.
Did you know the pigs can see the wind?
Asked Brother Rizzler.
Actually, I did,
Tuppe replied.
And that on Christmas Day all sheep bow 3 times to the east in reverence to their ancestors who tended the birth of Christ.
Pigs I know about, all about, not sheep.
Cornelius began to feel that a lot of valuable time was perhaps being wasted. Why can't Rune's papers be published? He asked.
Because they would never allow it.
They?
Tuppe made a patronising face.
This would no doubt be the they who suppressed Rune's work throughout his lifetime, the dreaded greybeards of the scientific fraternity.
No, this is another they entirely, and you look very foolish with the word smug printed across your forehead.
Who are they? Cornelius demanded. You know.
Tell us.
The old monk sighed.
All right. They're beings of an order halfway between man and the angels, another race. They have always been here. Hugo Rune discovered them. They ruined him for it.
Is Hugo Rune really dead? The eyes of Cornelius Murphy focused above the old monk's head. He isn't, is he? Brother Rizzler fell back in his chair. Extraordinary little lights fizzed and popped around him.
Rune died in Hastings, in a cheap boarding house. I have the death certificate.
He never died. I've spoken with him. Where is he?
No, this interview is ended. I've told you enough. You may take the papers, read them, and you will understand. Seek out the rest. Find the ocarina.
Cornelius watched the pyrotechnic display die down. The ancient ex-acolyte reached into the drawer of his desk and took out a green leather volume.
These are his papers. I had them bound together in chronological order. Take them and go.
Cornelius accepted the volume and hugged it to his chest. If I can solve this, perhaps you might be cured of your affliction.
It cannot be solved. All is lost to me now. I am cursed for my folly. I stepped inside. I saw them. Rune never returned. I came back alone, and this is what I became.
I'll solve it, said Cornelius.
He will,
Tuppe agreed.
Trust him, he'll solve it, whatever it is. What is it, by the way, Cornelius?
The tall boy managed a wink and a reasonably sized grin. I think I know. I think I've always known. You'll have your cure, Brother Rizzler. Keep watching the sky. The old monk gazed back at him.
You have a huge light bulb flashing above your head,
he observed.